Whatever, we are live. Yeah, welcome to the stream. Welcome to the video stream, by the way. Yeah. The thing was, yeah, I always used to react to like what? The drama videos and stuff, yeah. I always used to do that, but now I kind of like want to change. Yeah, I kind of like want to change my change the topic today, yeah. Because yeah, I'm not saying I don't enjoy those videos, yeah, I enjoy those videos. But still, when I see One Piece, I was like, yeah, I need to react to this, and also at the same time, it's from a 3D channel, yeah, and it's like my part of my job, yeah. Well, I just want to react to this stuff and see what he actually do with like Luffy in 3D. Yeah, I want to see what he actually can do with that, but fucking still, yeah. You guys probably think, yeah, he doesn't know anything, bruh. Once you see through it, you will definitely say he knows something. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, you will definitely say he knows something for fucking shit. Whatever, let's get to the video. By the way, it's from Nogi. Yeah, if you're like what, if you're like some guy who like into like what 3D and want to learn 3D, yeah, check his videos out. Yeah, if I yeah, this guy probably like, yeah, he had some good videos on the 3D stuff. If I have to say, kind of like learn some videos kind of like learn somewhat 3D from him. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I learned somewhat 3D from him. I'm never going to lie, because yeah, there are like really like talented people on the internet who like gives you knowledge, brother. Trust me, he's one of them. Whatever, let's see what's he actually cooking. Yeah,
but in 3D. I will use this model. This is Luffy from the anime
yeah.
One Piece, but in 3D. I will use this model to recreate 4 scenes from the original
Wow.
anime. The first scene is the easiest, but it gets harder and harder from there on out, up to the point where I don't even know if I can recreate the last scene. I even spoke with a professional anime compositor to learn more about the post-production stage that One Piece goes through to achieve its unique look like the
Brother, that is like the real fundamental truth. So many like what? So many anime, so many anime 3D content, anime 3D makers doesn't know. Like these people thought you're just learning toon shading is enough, but bro, there's like a compositing phase that you need to go through to get that unique look. Yeah, not only that, not only that. Yeah, like not only that, like so like not only One Piece, so many animes go through that. That's the reason they have that unique look. Yeah, but without a composition, it looks fine. But because of the composition, it has that grants. Still, yes, that is the thing these people need to understand. That is the thing these people like what? How should I tell this? Yeah, these people who make 3D anime style, they need to understand it's not only toon shader. It's more than that. You need to learn about composition and all, and more stuff. That is like the one of the reason I don't ever touch. I don't ever like touch anything related to toon shading, because I kind of like try to work on it, but bro, once you go deeper and deeper, it's like way harder, fucking way harder. That's the reason I kind of like went with photorealistic, not even tried toon shading. No, it's so fucking hard. Yeah.
these uneven outlines. And even he said that the last scene would be impossible to recreate in 3D. Well, let's find out. My goal is to master the art of 3D anime. Let's see if I can recreate One Piece.
Let me say this. There's no fucking way. There is no way we can actually like make anime only in 3D. No, there's no way. It needs to be a combination of both 2D and 3D. That is like the ultimate. That's like the ultimate end goal of 3D. Ultimate end goal of anime. Yeah, and using some AI tools on top of that. But still, if I have to say, the ultimate end goal of anime was using like 2D and 3D, not only 3D, because brother, the things you do in 2D, you can't do them in 3D for fucking sure. Like for example, like yeah, like for example, like the weird proportions, and also like the point of views, and also like what, the physics you do in 2D is very hard to do in the 3D. Yeah, we need to agree on that. Yeah, that's the reason I said using 2D plus 3D is the best end goal of the anime. Yeah.
Starting with a simple cube.
Yeah.
At first, all that matters is to get the most basic
Well, bro, I need to say, bro, This motherfucker must be like doesn't know how to like do 3D modeling. I suck at it, especially when it comes to like characters. Yeah, fuck off.
proportions right. And in case
I
you
suck
didn't
at it,
know,
brother.
Luffy doesn't look like a realistic
Yeah.
human. So having the references in the background to capture his appearance is pretty important, especially for the head since it's so stylized. For now, I'll only focus on the front and side view since those are the angles that show the shape of his head the best. Any other angle
If I have to say, he's going like way much into 2D. He could have gone for like what the plane face and like what draw his face on it. Yeah, as I said, using 2D plus 3D is a correct option. Yeah, he kind of like goes way into 3D, like what going into like this kind of like what. Yeah, you need to do this like etc. Like yeah, he could have gone for like what this kind of like plain 3D face and draw his face on it, like his eyes and stuff. That would be way better.
and side view since those are the angles that show the shape of his head the best. Any other angle can cause big problems in the future, but
Yeah.
we don't have to worry about that just yet. Now all that's left is to refine it a bit by merging all the pieces together and sculpting the individual muscles. And look at that, that's how you can create his body. But of course it's obviously not done yet. There are
Yeah.
3 steps left to finish the 3D model. First, let's make the model actually look 2D by limiting the lighting to a single highlight and shadow color, just like the typical anime cell shading. The second thing
I kind of like this motherfucker because brother, there are so many people in the toon shooting space. They kind of want this kind of like what a certain style of shadows, but he's not going for that. Like yeah, when I said certain style of shadows, they yeah you no wait let
to
me
a
show you.
single highlight and shadow
Let me
color,
show
just like
you.
there are 3 steps left to finish the 3D model. First, let's make the model actually look 2D by limiting the lighting to a single highlight and shadow color, just like the typical anime
You can see this, right? Yeah,
cell shade.
the shadows are kind of like going everywhere, but some people in the like 2D anime space, yeah, like 3D anime space, they want this kind of like what these shadows needs to be like calculated here. You can't have this kind of shadows, etc. Like bro, it's fucking 2D, brother. Yeah, the shadow sometimes goes everywhere.
The second thing missing is the hair,
I need to
which was
give props for him for doing that. Yeah.
probably the weirdest thing I've modeled in a long time. The biggest problem with hair is that it can change its overall shape very easily, which is something that is pretty hard to do in 3D. Even just looking at these references, you can see how none of these are exactly the same. So I decided to just use
Brother.
one of these as
Yeah, he could have done that the One Piece hair in like 3D even easily. Yeah. Let me say how.
this
Yeah.
is Luffy from the anime One Piece.
Let me say how. Yeah. Geonodes. Geonodes. No. Geonodes. What? Volume to mesh. Volume to mesh. Where is it? Like yeah, there is yeah. You can actually see this, right? There is this node called volume to mesh in the like blender, that the program he using. Yeah, he can actually like make this hair. Yeah, he can actually like make this hair by doing some simulation, like what some kind of like smoke simulation, like yeah, it kind of like going everywhere, and kind of like three change that into like 3D, and later he use the composition to like add like what this kind of like how should I do this? This kind of like outlines, yeah. But still, he could have done that, yeah. But he still go with like modeling, yeah. I don't know why. He literally can do this. He literally can do this, yeah. Like using like a volume, like yeah. The thing I'm saying was this, yeah. Smoke, smoke in Blender. Like see that you can do like Luffy here by using some smoke. and after that change that into like change it into like a, like, how should I tell this, like change it into like some kind of like what, yeah, some kind of like, how should I tell this, yeah, yeah, that note I said, yeah, that note I said, yeah, yeah, this note, where is this note, yeah, he could have done his hair way easier. He don't need to do the modeling at all, but still he went for the modeling.
That's my reference and tried to recreate that as good as possible. But that meant I had a front view, but no side view. I can position the strands on 2 axes,
By the way,
but
if you actually do that, it actually gives him a 3D point of view. Like literally, it gives him 3D point of view, and even easier to work. But still, he went for very hard work. I don't know why.
not on the
Because he literally said he needs to do the composition to make it work.
third. So I decided to just place each one somewhere around the head and connect them afterwards by filling the gaps between them. And the end result looks good enough, I would say. Which means that there's only one thing left to finish the 3D model, and it's probably pretty obvious what it is.
Yeah, brother. He's definitely very good at modeling. Yeah, I'm so sucked at it, brother. I'm more of an animation guy and an environment guy. Yeah, yeah. Even though I'm not saying I make environment props. No. All I do was like take props and place them in the environment. Yeah, it's kind of like I'm kind of like this kind of like picky guy. I'm not that much of a guy. Yeah, my type of work can be easily like taken away from AI, but these people are never going to lose their jobs. No, I yeah. Uh, mm,
And with that, the 3D model is done, but it doesn't really look that great yet. With a couple more changes though, it looks a lot better. These changes are not really part of the basic 3D model, but rather modifications to make it look more 2D. And let's explore what those are while creating our 4 shots. Starting with the simplest one. It's pretty static and doesn't include the face, which is usually the hardest part to remake in 3D. I overlaid the original shot over my camera and then tried to match the pose with my model as closely as possible. But very quickly it's obvious.
well, that's what I do when I'm making 3D shots. Yeah, like I just take myself as a reference and do stuff and kind of align with that. That's it. Yeah, most of the times, most of the 3D animators do that. Yeah, some people say yeah, it's not a good process, but it works. If it works, why we need to like give a fuck about what's happening, right? Yeah.
Obvious that you can't really recreate the pose by just bringing the limbs into the same position. Which is why it was so important that the skeleton for Luffy can not only put him into all kinds of poses, but even go beyond that and stretch his limbs to be even longer than normal. Only through basically overstretching the model was I actually able to recreate the original pose. When you're drawing, you don't really have to think about perfect proportions and just draw it how it looks the best. So even though the 3D model's proportions are more accurate, it still looks worse and you basically have to break it to achieve the best looking results. And this breaking of the 3D rules is one of the main things you do to make it look more 2D. You'll see many more techniques like this one in the other scenes, but we're not done with this one yet. After stretching him out a bit, after extending his limbs, it already looks much better. But a few things are still. After extending his limbs, it already.
That was 3D. Damn, brother, that looks crazy as fuck, bro. That looks so good.
Looks
Yeah, it kind of looks like it kind of has that kind of like painterly feel. Yeah.
much better. But a few things are still missing. First of all, we have his shirt that is waving in the wind. Creating good cloth movement can be pretty hard, but luckily these were actually pretty easy to make. I can use a wave texture and let that run along the edge of the cloth. This wave texture can then displace the geometry of that cloth to create the general wave pattern.
Well, what you're doing was like a procedural texturing and using procedural texturing to like displace it. That's it.
Afterwards, I can just apply the same displacement again to make it rounder. If I now apply that to a shirt, it looks like this. And I think that comes
Damn, brother, that looks so good.
pretty close to the original.
Yeah.
But even with all these improvements, we haven't even talked about the one that makes the biggest difference. And all we have to do is add a grease pencil object to the scene. The grease pencil allows you to draw anywhere in the 3D scene. It also has a line art modifier. I don't think I have to explain what it does. But
Yeah, like you need to understand, brother. Like, yeah, Blender started as a program that was so hard to work, but now it is like the industry standard. Like yeah, even like industry people need to like shut the fuck up and saying, yo, it is like very hard to work. No, it has the tools that even like so many industries doesn't have. Fuck off, brother. Like yeah, I'm happy that I'm using Blender. I learned Blender, and I'm learning Blender literally. Yeah, now industry is like bowing down their heads to use Blender. Like even like 5 years back, it's not that they don't even like accepted Blender at all. You need to learn Maya or something. But now Blender is like, bro, fucking greatest of the greatest now, literally. And also thanks to like thanks to the people who made Blender, and thanks to the creator of the Blender, brother. He actually like stood on it and made it free and made it open source, brother. Hands up to him, yeah. Whatever, yeah, whatever. It's kind of getting off topic, yeah.
There's more. You can also freeze and adjust these lines in case you want to remove some or add more details, for example. Look how much better it looks after adding these lines.
He could have animated this, yeah, like it kind, yeah, like these kind of lineouts are kind of like, as he said, kind of like you can draw. He could have animated this, yeah.
Now we're
That would
almost
have
done
made
with
it
the
even more
scene. There's only one more thing left to do. With this thing, we can not only fix the weird shading on his body, but also
better. Yeah, sorry guys. Sorry guys.
add these extra detail lines and his hair, since the hair we have is white and doesn't really work for this scene. What can do all these things? It is once again the grease pencil. Not only can we use it for the line art, but also to basically draw over the 3D scene to fix anything that is broken on the 3D model. And we can do that by placing it in front of the 3D scene from the camera's perspective. Now anything that still looks a bit weird can be fixed, and very dynamic elements like the hair or the energy surrounding Luffy can be added by just drawing them. And it looks pretty good. But this is just the beginning. We'll have to break this model more and more.
Damn.
But
brother.
this is
Fuck how? Dude. I love this guy, bro. I fucking love this guy. Fun, man. Literally, bro. As I said, these kind of people are not ever going to lose their jobs. But what I'm doing, like what I do was like what? Animating stuff, like what? Putting keyframes and stuff. I can be like taken away from the AI. But these kind of people never going to lose their job, because you fucking see, he remade a stuff with only using 3D knowledge he has. He can like even go further, like use so many things, but he didn't do that. If you only do this with only 3D knowledge he has, but if you learn more, no one can actually take away his job, brother. No one. Like it's like almost like same to same. Like yeah, like one to one. Yeah, still it kind of like had this kind of like weird angles, but still it's almost like one to one. Damn, brother.
just the beginning. We'll have to break this model more and more as we go through these scenes up to, you'll see when we get there. One Piece often has very big and exaggerated expressions.
Yeah.
Even though the skeleton itself is not able to do that, we can create them in a different way. First, we can bring the model and camera into the correct position to match the original. Then we can adjust the face to match the reference. Afterwards, we realize that we just wasted an hour because we need more than just one expression. So we ask ourselves if there's a way to make these adjustments optional so we can create multiple and turn them on or off with a single value slider.
Bro, the shape keys is like one of the best things happen in the fucking Blender, brother. Not gonna lie. Those things can actually like save your time way more than you actually think. Like yeah, if you're a 3D artist, the shape keys is like not 3D artist, a 3D animator. The shape keys is like one of the best things happen to them. Especially like the facial animator. Brother, the shape keys do so many wonders. Like yeah, sometimes the shape keys animation is way better than like the facial mocap sometimes, especially when it comes to like this kind of 2D objects. Like yeah, this kind of like 2D art style. Yeah, 2D art style, the shape keys are like the key to go for it, bro. They are like yeah, and also it's very hard to make shape keys, but still once you master it, it's like the greatest asset to the 3D animators. Yeah.
And look at that, we can do that with shape keys.
Yeah.
But for these new expressions, we also need a new set of teeth, since the one I already made before doesn't really work here. The nice part about this art style is that stuff like the teeth are so simple.
Nah, it can work, yeah. What he need to do was, yeah, I think he made teeth like this, yeah, like for example, like what he did was, yeah, like he kind of like have this kind of like white block as an anime teeth. Yeah, he didn't think things through, but you can actually like do teeth and do these kind of weird things. All you need to do was like he needs to like build these teeth before. He didn't actually think things through. That's it, yeah.
That it makes 3D modeling those much easier as well. But the teeth being so simple also created an issue. I could create individual teeth, but that can look weird from certain angles. There's actually a technique that I discovered during my Deadpool anime project that can add lines like these anywhere on the body super easily. There are a couple of extra options for the grease pencil line art modifier for what it should detect as lines. One of those options is this one. With this enabled, it can not only detect the edges of a mesh like the teeth, but also individual edges. Which means that I can place these single edges anywhere on the body and they get turned into lines.
Yeah, that's true.
This way I can not only add the lines on the teeth, but also the scratches on his face. The main issue now is getting the lighting to look like the original, which in this case might not even possible. In 2D you can just draw highlights on his nose like that, but that isn't really possible in 3D without the rest looking weird, since 3D lines still behave somewhat physically accurate. There are ways to change how a model reacts to lighting to stylize it more, but those are very tedious to set up in my
As I
opinion.
said, brother, yeah, these are the kind of things it's like, yeah, very important. Sometimes you can like cheat them, yeah, but most of the people don't want to use cheats. They want to go with like this kind of like weird process. Yeah, you need to like you need to have this kind of like this kind of like facets. You need to make it work, bro. Shut the fuck up.
In this case, there was something much easier I could use. The basic material for each object has a highlight and a shadow color. Now to add custom lighting to the scene, I can just create two more materials. One for only highlights and one for only shadows. And I can use them just like the edge lines by placing geometry on top of the original model. With this, I can create shadows and highlights wherever I want and don't have to care about the lighting at all. This worked so well that I had to fix almost nothing with the grease pencil. These first two scenes were a great way to test out the general workflow for this project. And since these two worked out so well, I thought now it's time to push this model to the extreme. Well, I thought now it's time to the general workflow for this project. And since
Fuck off, brother.
These first two scenes,
I think he could have done this like some kind of like procedural shading. Yeah, like for example, like you use some gradient to like move the texture up. I think that's what he did.
For a great way to
But still, it looks great, brother. It looks fucking great.
Test out the general workflow for this project.
Fuck off.
And since these two worked out so well, I thought now it's time to push this model to the extreme.
Okay, this will be hard. This will be hard. Definitely hard.
This whole scene from the anime is pretty crazy, but this shot right here especially was the one I wanted to recreate for this project. There are a couple of things that make this shot much harder than the first two, and I wasn't really sure how
because, bro, the thing was, the first two shots are like this, like what? They kind of like still frames and like what? Just some mouth animation, but it's not on the still frame. It's kind of like have this kind of like wobbly stuff, and also at the same time his whole body is in the frame. That's very hard to do. When your whole body is in the frame, to do that animation is hard. But to do the 2D animation, it is even more hard. And also on top of that, he needs to need to think about like the like what? His dress, and also at the same time this kind of cloudy stuff, and also his eyes, and also his hair, and also his facial expression like slowly changing. Brother. Fucking brother. And also like this whole animation is kind of like weird. It doesn't follow the principles like what, the arm looks same every frame. Nah, it doesn't follow that. If you actually like see the anime, the arm looks different in the every frame. That is very hard to do in the 3D when it comes to like full body animations.
Solve these issues. The first one are the general shapes. The lines and shapes are much more sketchy and look like they've been drawn freestyle, but the first two scenes are much more straight and organized. The second thing is the pose. The first two are somewhat distorted and stretched, but this one takes that to another level. Lastly, the compositing. The chromatic aberration at the edges, the glowing eyes, the iris in the background, everything is just a bit more extreme here. So let's see if I can recreate it. At this point I gave up trying to match the pose without stretching the model. The new strategy was to match the most important body parts as closely as possible. Like his fist, head and legs. The rest then gets stretched to look as much like the original as possible. And as long as you don't leave the camera's perspective, it looks pretty good. The only problem that this stretching creates is that the limbs gets much thinner, but that's where we can use shape keys again to adjust their shape. Speaking of adjusting shapes, while we're already at it, might as well see if shape keys can also turn this rather clean mesh into these more sketchy shapes. The pants, for example, are much bumpier, so if we apply the same to the model, it matches.
Shape keys can actually do that, but yeah, the thing was, the more you rely on shape keys when it comes to face, it was a good thing. But when it comes to body parts, if you rely morely on shape keys, it kind of like creates this kind of like weird area that it kind of distorts your whole mesh. Yeah, sometimes that is the problem with shape keys. Yeah, but still, shape keys are like very much like a very good product for 3D animation. But still, yeah, it has its downsides, especially when it comes to body.
The original pretty well. The hand is also much more defined. There wasn't that much geometry to play with for the hands, but despite that, I think it comes pretty close to the original. Lastly again, the face. After the last scene, I knew that this expression was possible, so now I just had to create it again. Now for the last point. I learned a lot about anime compositing by talking with Pilo, who works as a professional in this field. The first thing that surprised me is that he said that they usually get the entire footage in one layer. In my project, I can render my scene in multiple layers, like the line art and the colors, so I can have more control over each one. But since it's common to only get a single layer, they use two custom tools. To first select the line art and move it to its own layer, and the second one to fill the line art with the fill color to get a layer that has only the colors. Another question I had for ages was how One Piece creates these lines that vary in thickness. I always thought drawing them like that manually would take way too long, so there had to be a way to do this during the composition stage. And apparently the way they create these lines is in fact in compositing with the roughen edges effect in After Effects. For anime compositing in general, After Effects is the most common tool. But since I use DaVinci,
also now it's kind of like so many people going to like DaVinci for composition, but still, bro, yeah, DaVinci is kind of like still kind of lagging when it comes to like 2D composition. Yeah, After Effects still take the edge, but yeah, once DaVinci is kind of like getting into the game more, the fucking After Effects is nobody, brother. But still, DaVinci is like one of the best composition tools when it comes to like video editing and like 3D, yeah, video editing, like also like videos and also like 3D videos, like. But when it comes to 2D, it's very hard to do, but let's see how we actually do that.
To resolve, I didn't want to buy another editing software, so I tried to recreate those effects. The only one I really needed to recreate was the roughen edges effect, which actually wasn't that hard to do. It doesn't look exactly like the original, but I think if I spend a bit more time on this, I can get it there. After a couple more glow effects and the chromatic aberration, this is the final shot.
Chromatic aberration he can do in the Blender, by the way. Chromatic aberration is easy to do in the Blender. All you need to do was take your model, right? This model, and like render it in a PNG. Yeah, if you render it in a PNG, it's easy to it is easy to do like chromatic aberration. Yeah.
Now for the finale, the shot that Pilo said would be impossible to recreate in 3D. Just like the last one, this shot also takes the look from the first two and pushes it to the extreme. But that's not really the reason why Pilo said that this shot would be impossible to recreate in 3D. It would be impossible because of how it's been animated. Just like the last shot.
The thing was, brother, the first shot and second shot and third shot is like they can, yeah, even though they don't follow the geometry, still they are kind of like what, static. Yeah, they still follow this kind of like, yo, we still the same guy, but kind of stretching somewhere. But this scene, where is this? This scene is entirely fluid. Like, yeah, like whole body is like kind of like moving, like entirely moving. Like yeah, he in the scene his whole body looks like fluid with human skin. That's how it looks. To do that kind of thing, it's easy if you kind of use like physics and stuff, but still if you use physics, sometimes it kind of breaks the model. Yeah, yeah, as I said, sometimes it works, sometimes it's don't. But still, let's see how we actually do that.
Last one, this shot also takes the look from the first two and pushes it to the extreme.
Yeah.
But that's not really the reason why Pilo said that this shot would be impossible to recreate in 3D. It would be impossible because of how it's been animated. Just like the last shot, this one is drawn in a much more freestyle way than most of the other scenes in the anime. This style makes the body look like it's warping constantly. Look at the stomach, for example. The abs look like one of those baking time lapses.
It's kind of like, bro, as I say, it's kind of like that has that more fluidity. Yeah, when it has that much fluidity, it is very hard to replicate it in the 3D. Especially with what 2D. Yeah, 2D art style. Yeah, if it is like only 3D art style, yeah, you can actually replicate it because 3D art style doesn't have this kind of like weird shadow issues and stuff. All you need to do is use some kind of like what some cloth modifier on the body and do some, yeah, and like use some wind to like wiggle it. Yeah, but when it comes to like 2D art style, it is very hard to do 2D art style and do that using physics to do that. Yeah, but let's see how
Doing that in 3D, which loves consistency, would be impossible. Maybe. I didn't want to give up that easily, so I tried it anyway. But for now, only as a still frame. And here's why. In theory, you can create any shot as long as you can create each frame of it. The question would then be how much more time consuming it is compared to just drawing it. Since I wasn't sure if I can create the shot at all, I decided to attempt a single frame first. And I felt pretty bad for my 3D model. To match the face at all, I had to do some huge adjustments with the shape keys, which from any other angle looks very interesting. But as long as the camera perspective looks fine, it's okay. The other major part of this process were the 2D adjustments over the 3D model. I could have also created the shading with geometry like in shot 2, but decided to draw them instead. In the end, the shot looks like this. So in theory, the shot is possible. Now, my question to you is, would you want to see me attempt to recreate the whole animated version of this shot in another video? Maybe even both of these shots? Let me know in the comments, and if enough people vote yes, I will try to recreate the impossible shot. I still have
I don't think
some techniques I've never used before, so maybe for this scene, it's finally time to use them.
Okay, okay, he has a arsenal, brother. He kind of like giving a glimpse to get some more audience. Yeah, he has a arsenal. Yeah, he knows what he is doing. As I said, you need to put time to make it work. For fucking sure, if you put time, it works. He has a arsenal, brother. Yeah, let's go follow him. Yeah, I want to see it. I fucking want to see it. Yeah, I fucking will subscribe, brother. For that only thing, I'll subscribe. Yeah, I hope you fucking make that. Yeah, let's see actually make that or not. Yeah, let's see. Nah, he didn't make that. Yeah, he didn't make that. I fucking hope you make that, brother. Please, please, yeah, please.
But in 3D, I will use.
It seems he has full of arsenal. Yeah, he has full of arsenal of things to do stuff. Yeah, like I hope you fucking make that. Yeah, please, brother. I fucking hope you make that. Yeah, whatever. Yeah, if you're still here, yeah, like subscribe, whatever you want to do, and also subscribe to him. Bro, that video is kind of like funny, brother. Like yeah, it's kind of entertaining at the same time. Even though it is. Yeah, even though you get some knowledge from it, it also at the same time entertaining. Yeah, go subscribe to me if you want, if you can. Yeah, whatever. Bye.